So, welcome to this webinar. It's the first of the year for us, which is super exciting. We always love to have these. I notice people are putting in the chat where they're from, so continue to do that. We love to see how far reaching our webinars are. And today's topic is Year of the Monstera, but we have the right people on our panel. So we're also going to talk about winter houseplant care to celebrate that today is International or National Houseplant Day. It's a special day, no matter what. Go out and buy your houseplant. I was just making notes to start rooting one of my philodendrons that got too long. So I'm celebrating in the right way. I'm Diane from National Garden Bureau, and I want to introduce our panelists. We have Justin from Costa Farms. We have Pieter from Evanthia. We have double Heathers today. One is from Leafjoy Plants and one is from Express. So let's go in that order. Justin, would you like to introduce yourself and your company?
Good morning and happy Houseplant Appreciation Day from Costa Farms. My name is Justin. I am a consumer horticulturist and director of research and development here at Costa Farms. If you are not familiar with us, we are one of the largest houseplant growers in the world. We're a family-run farm based in usually balmy Miami, Florida. We grow about 1,500 varieties of plants. We ship them across the country. And you can find them in stores like Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart, Costco, IKEA, and a lot of independent garden centers.
That's all?
We try to make plants accessible to everybody.
Excellent. And thank you. It's Houseplant Appreciation Day, not
Yes.
International Houseplant Day. Okay, great. Thank you. Pieter, you're joining us from Europe, so thank you for making the time. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
You're welcome, Diane. Thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Pieter. I work for Evanthia. Evanthia is a young plant nursery in the Netherlands, and we're making all kind of tropical foliage plants for mainly for the European market. Myself, I'm working for Evanthia as a product and sourcing manager. So I make sure that we get the right material in from all parts of the world. So I'm looking for the newest varieties, the new tissue culture plants, but also for the right quality of seeds and all varieties from all over the world. And beside that, we also an breeding company in all kind of cut flowers and pot and bedding plants.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, well, we have two Heathers. You're both at the end of the alphabet, you said. Let's see here. Heather, you're up here in my corner. Heather Von Alman. You want to
introduce yourself? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody from snowy Alabama. We got 3 inches of snow last night, so that's pretty exciting. And happy Houseplant Appreciation Day. I work for Express Seed Company in their Verde division. That is the initiative that handles the sourcing and the supply chain management of tropical foliage and succulents. So I work with Pieter. He's one of our big suppliers for Monstera. So we just offer support to the Express sales team. We offer marketing support. I'm the technical sales rep, so we offer a lot of technical support for growers that are just getting into foliage. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. And Heather, I'm not going to call you number 2. So our other super special Heather.
You can call me Heather number 5. I'm just grateful to be included. Thank you so much. My name is Heather Wheatley. I'm with Proven Winners, where we have developed a company that looks for the best plant in the market and the best growers to deliver those plants. And so we looked for a houseplant company that had a matching ethos with us, and we found the plant company in Virginia, Stewart's Draft, Virginia. And together with the plant company, we developed the Leafjoy brand. As a horticulturist, I studied horticultural science forever. And my personal mission was land stewardship. And then I fell in love with the health and wellness benefits of houseplants. And so Leafjoy being a pioneer for us in the industry, just 3 years old, I hopped on that wagon, and I'm so delighted to present the leafjoy brand and all of the amazing leafjoy plants. They are viral indexed, so we're very proud of that. Our goal is to make you successful. You don't want to just get a gift that's one and done. You want to grow with it so that you, like others, Diane had mentioned that she was going to pot up or cut back her overgrowing plant material. We want that journey for you. So the plant company offers that and leafjoy delivers it. So it's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for having us.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. And Heather, you touched on something that we're very big here on at National Garden Bureau is how gardening can help you. So I think to all of our attendees, just look at our 4 panelists. I mean, I think they're very happy to talk about plants, which is an exact segue into my first question for you. And anybody can go first, but when people, okay, so let's say you're at a cocktail party and somebody says, oh, what do you do? You know, what's your career? And once you explain to them, then they probably come back with, oh, I have a question for you. So what's one of the first questions people ask you about houseplants when you're meeting somebody new? Anybody can go first.
Well, mostly of the question I get from relatives and friends and people is how to give them water. Everybody is always struggling to give them the right amount of water, and I'm always telling it's not so difficult. I always give them water, in a tub. I put the pots in the tub and I keep them there for 10, 15 minutes so that they can get the water from the tub and put some fertilizers in it, some now and then. And it takes what it needs. And after 10, 15 minutes, the plant have enough. And that works.
So then you're the most popular person at the cocktail party because you just shared how to water, right?
Well, yeah, I try to help, and plants is our passion, and we want to keep the plants in the right shape and in a good condition, and then water is essential to keep them in good shape. And yeah, most of the time, yeah, people asking questions like that. I forget to give them water, or is it so difficult? Sometimes I give too much or too less. And then I said, put it in a tub. You put the plant in the tub and you do the other things. And then you switch it after 10, 15 minutes and continue doing other things. And then you can keep plants for years.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I'm guessing that the other 3 of you also get questions about watering, but what else do you get at?
Well, we don't. I mean, I get questions about watering, but most people just ask us about our hydroponic collection and how when we did our market surveys and things before we started, that we solved that watering issue because we have these H2O bowls. So they're soil free. So you really don't have to worry about watering. You just watch the water level, which you can see through the glass bowl and keep those roots covered. And they're the easiest way to make sure that a house plant is watered is if it's already in the H2O bowl, which is very, very popular.
Okay, Justin, Heather?
I would say most questions it has to do, with watering and where people are struggling. People be like, oh, I have this house plant and its leaves are turning yellow, or there's a horrible white fuzzy stuff on it. And you're like, oh God, get rid of it then. But usually the struggles come from watering. They're watering too much, I would say, more than too little. And when it's too much water, we all know the soil, there's not oxygen in the soil, and then the plants can't take up nutrients, and then they start to struggle, and then that leaves them open for pests to come in and kind of infest them because they don't have their resistance up. So kind of explaining that to people, and then their eyes glaze over and they're bored, but I'm kidding. No. But yeah, that's probably the most common things is trying to troubleshoot issues.
Okay, Justin?
Yeah, the questions I can answer, it's usually about yellow leaves. Yellow leaves, I make the analogy, they're like the upset stomach of the houseplant world. It can be anything from you had bad sushi last night to you have stomach cancer. And you need to really dig in and get a cause. Of the questions I can't answer, it's usually people asking me to help identify their plants. And I usually can't answer them when they're super vague. I have this plant and it has green leaves and they're kind of long, but not really, and they're kind of shiny. And just sort of drawing that mental picture in my brain doesn't always match up with what they have. And so some of those ID questions when they don't have the plant with them are challenging.
I'm sure they are. Now, I'm surprised that none of you say you get asked about temperature. That's the first question we have in the Q&A. So I am going to ask about temperature in general, but also specifically for Monstera, if it requires a certain temperature. So who wants to tackle a temperature question?
So average household temperatures are great for Monstera. That's one of my favorite things there, is that you don't have to worry about that aspect. If you're comfortable, your Monstera probably will too. If you want to bring it outside and you're in a hot summer area, that is also just fine. Most Monsteras come from tropical Central and South America, so they like the steamy weather as well. So if you're uncomfortably hot, your plant's probably just fine as well.
Yeah, and I'm in Maryland, and so the we watch around 55. So if it's something that you have out, including Monstera, if you have out by your pool, I mean, obviously you don't have it in direct sun, but you have it like in the shade a little bit. You just want to watch that those nighttime temperatures don't go below 55.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
Monstera is one of the most tolerant of houseplants.
Yeah.
I spent most of my career in Southern California, and it thrives there in that desert type of environment outdoors, of course, with some protection, some sun shading. But then in Florida, and of course in the tropics, it also thrives in that steamy, hot humidity, which is its natural environment. But it can take a whole range, and it's one of those that's super forgiving in the winter time when we do have lower light levels and it's a lot drier inside.
Now drier, that's definitely something that comes up, the humidity.
So do Monsteras like humid, dry, somewhere in between?
They
So
will
like,
take, oh,
go ahead.
sorry,
I'm sorry,
Heather.
Justin. No, please go, please.
They will take almost as much as humidity as you can realistically give them indoors. But as a good general rule, the thicker the more rubbery like the leaf is, the better it will tolerate lower humidity levels. So something like Monstera deliciosa, which we'll see in the slides later, that is great for average humidity around 40%. If you have something like Monstera Esqueleto, those leaves are much thinner, and that, you probably want relative humidity over about 50% to prevent any potential browning.
Well, I think that was a really good segue. I think it's time for us to pop over to the PowerPoint that I have showing. And this is going to talk about the different types. So, and I think we probably have 2 or 3, maybe 4 slides of each type of Monstera. So why don't you guys just jump in here and start telling us about these different types of Monstera?
Is this anyone's favorite?
Yeah.
I love this one because it's such a great conversation about fenstration and the evolution and what the purpose of those little cuts in the leaf are. So a lot of people ask that. Mine doesn't have fenstration, or mine is developing, but then the new leaves come and they don't have it. And what is that about? And it's kind of fun to talk with people about what those little windows do and the purpose of them, which is just this simple, light can go through the plant material because it's on the forest floor as it climbs up, and it's getting more light that helps filter it through. Wind resistant is another benefit of that fenstration. And then of course letting water through is also a benefit of that. What's always surprising to people is that it's part of the structural support of the foliage. So people, but there's holes in it. Like, well, you have windows in your house. So, for them to appreciate the way that Justin explains things, like in plain speak so that people can liken them to something that they experience. I always like to explain that, light, wind, structure are all the benefits of that fenestration in many varieties of the Monstera, but really shows up nicely in the adansonii.
Okay, so I think we have a couple pictures of this type. Let me just get through here.
As both a grower and a home gardener, I really appreciate that Monstera adansonii is one of the faster growing species. So it gives you that gratification that some of the other ones you have to be a little more patient with. And then another thing that's really, really cool about Monstera adansonii is if you grow it up vertically, up a wall, a moss pole, something like that, the leaf size will get much bigger. If you have a bright, warm spot in your home and you grew it vertically, these leaves can get 2 feet long. So, it changes in a peel. And it's a great point of pride, I think, once you start to get it to size, that, hey, look at what I've done. That just adds to the overall Monstera adansonii experience.
So what's the total height that this will get to? Or does it depend on the specific variety?
This one is practically unlimited inside. If you wanted to climb up and around your house and over and around things, you can get it, 20 feet.
Wow.
A lot of people like to prune it to keep it from getting that long and so that it feels a little lusher and bushier.
Excellent. Okay. Looks like the next one we're going to talk about is the deliciosa.
And I think deliciosa is just one of those bulletproof houseplants like your Sansevieria. As Justin pointed out, with the thick waxy leaves, it's very forgiving of temperatures, very few pest problems. Something I wanted to touch on, excuse me, with deliciosa and a lot of these philodendrons, when people buy them, they're really cute, like in a 6-inch pot, and they look like they're going to clump. And I hope I'm not getting ahead of us, but I don't think a lot of people realize that they are going to trail and they're going to need support down the line. And Monstera really is no different. Without a pole or some type of support, it's going to get pretty big and rambling and kind of spill out of the pot unless you prune it. And usually you don't want to do that because it doesn't have a ton of foliage on it. In the wild, I think it can get up to like 90 feet or something, but in your house, it's probably around 6 feet is the average height that you're going to see.
So one of the questions that I get asked a lot, I kind of equate it to goldfish. So will a lot of the Monstera stay smaller in the smaller pot and then get larger in the larger container, or will they just start to shrivel and die if you don't transplant them to a larger pot because they're like, I want to get big, I want to get out of here?
At some point, being really root bound will stress them out. There's a line between, okay, this is okay and it's a little bit stressful, and hey, this is really impacting my health. When you stay on the good side of that line, it will restrict its growth a little bit. But really, it's more about how it grows. If you're growing most of these, especially the vining varieties, horizontally or letting them trail, they won't get nearly as big as if you let them climb. I don't know the physiological impetus behind it, but going up vertically is what causes all of these guys to make much bigger, more dramatic leaves. And if you don't do them vertically, the leaves tend to stay smaller and especially more small space friendly.
I love that fact. That's interesting. Let's see. So we're going through here with more deliciosa. Anybody else have anything to say about these? Hey, I have a question. I just thought of another question. So are there any documented life records of a Monstera? It sounds like, kept properly, they will keep growing and growing and living and living. Or do any of you have any examples of Monstera you've had for a long time?
I think Pieter, because his company, they go out into the jungle and they harvest. I mean, those plants. Are you just indoors or just in
I was
general?
meaning indoors, but outdoors would be interesting too.
Yeah, I mean, Pieter, how long do those plants? I mean, are they?
I didn't really get the question. Sorry.
As far as the life of a plant. Any
The life, how long they can
right.
you can, yeah, the plants you can keep them alive for years. You know, I have a Monstera, yeah, for more than 5 years. And when you trim them, you keep them in shape, yeah, and you give them yeah, enough water and fertilizer, you can keep them for years. And in the wild, I visit every year our suppliers, and they are collecting the seeds from plants which are many years. So yeah, they have a long life.
Excellent. We've got another good question here. With the name of this one, Monstera deliciosa, does that mean that it is edible, or does it produce anything edible?
Yes. You know, a really kind of random and fun thing about this one is that when it is fully mature, the fruit is edible and quite delicious. To me, it tastes like a combination, like if you put marshmallows, pineapple, and banana together in a blender. There's a tropical fruity sweetness to it. But the bizarre thing is that the fruit is not edible when it is not fully ripe. Before that fully ripe process, it has these little crystals in the fruits, and these crystals are also in the leaves and stems, which is why you always want to keep Monstera away from children or pets that will nibble. But these cells or these little crystals can tear up the cells in your mouth if you eat it too early. I have personally experienced that. I got a little bit greedy on the Monstera fruit that I was eating, and I ate too far down and experienced that, yep, this is exactly why you only eat it when it's fully mature. The fruit looks crazy bizarre. It's one of these tropical things that I think most people see it and they're like, who thought to eat that?
Yeah, it's one of all those things you think back in through history. It's like, well, who was the first one that was daring enough to eat that? So how do you know when it's fully ripe?
So the fruit has these little caps over each of the pieces of fruit. Think of it like a corn on the cob, and the corn on the cob is covered with like little green scales. Um, it is generally okay to start eating once the scale has fallen off the little kernel underneath. If you're pulling the scale off, that's when it's starting to get dicey that maybe these crystals are not are still there.
And will it produce the fruit indoors or only if it's outdoors?
Generally not. Typically indoors, you're not going to get enough light for it to bloom well. If it did, you'd have to pollinate it. And then yeah, and the fruit ripening process, if I remember it, like I see it all the time down here in Miami. And I've never timed it like any of my plants at home, but I think it takes about a year from flowering to fruit maturity when you can harvest and start snacking on it. So it's definitely a patience game.
Yeah, sounds like it. And speaking of patience, we've got a question here. How long does the deliciosa take to mature from seed? And I'm guessing that a lot of you are producing these from tissue culture and not from seed.
We start from seed.
You start from seed. Okay,
Yeah.
so how long does it take?
It depends, well, you know, how you want to point at maturity. Like the plant in the slide here, that is probably a year and a half, 2 years at the nursery before we ship it out at this size.
Okay. Well, it sounds
In
like
Miami
In
conditions.
Europe, we do it yeah, much faster. It takes us as a young plant company to take 9 to 12 weeks to make a liner, a young plant, and when we send them to our yeah, our customers to grow, it takes 16 to a year. It depends on which pot size you are planting them. If you, yeah, we are talking about centimeters and not in inches, so I'm not sure. But if you have a 12 centimeter pot, which is a smaller pot size, it takes 16 weeks to have a mature plant with is ready to go to the consumer. When you have big plant containers, then it can take 40 weeks to a year.
And that's greenhouse conditions.
That is in greenhouse conditions, exactly. Yeah, in glass houses, where the conditions are heated, when you have humidity. We also in the winter use some artificial light, to keep the plant in the right conditions, to grow them in the right conditions. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
At home, it's going to be much, much, much slower.
Because of the temperatures,
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
And the light levels.
Lighting,
Yeah.
yeah.
And typically humidity as well.
So if you're like me and you don't want to wait that long, I'm just going to my retailer and buying it already started.
Yeah, happily, they're generally inexpensive enough that you can find a good deal.
Yeah.
That's totally worth not waiting.
Okay. So now let's go on to the next type that we have in our slides. Who wants to tackle this one first?
I am happy to if nobody else wants to start on this one. So Monstera Esqueleto is it's similar to the adansonii, except the leaves have much larger fenestrations. So at Costa Farms, we're growing it to a larger size to help differentiate and to give you that value of, wow, this is a really cool plant at a big size that I don't have to wait for. If you had Monstera adansonii with leaves the same size, they'd be much more green, much less lacy. This plant has gone through a couple of challenges to its classification. It was once classified as Monstera epipremnioides, but then later they decided it is not. They think it may be some naturally occurring hybrid. And so Monstera Esqueleto, which is Spanish for skeleton, kind of look at the leaves and you can see where that comes from, is what it's being officially called right now.
Yeah, I
Always
read
have
that it
to
was.
stay up to date on those Latin names, don't you, and classifications.
I read that it was found at Kew Gardens as a sport of the can't say it, epipremnioides. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what I read. That it did come from that.
I like the description of skeleton and lacy. That really describes it well. So thank you for that. Next up, it looks like we've got Monstera Peru. No holes, fenestrations in this one. Is that true of the whole series?
That is correct. Monstera Peru, rather than fenestrating or splitting on the sides, it has this really, really luscious texture. The leaves are corrugated almost like cardboard. And at least on all of the ones I've grown, they don't get big either. They size up a little bit, but I haven't seen any leaves bigger than my hand. And that's kind of unique for Monsteras.
It's a more compact one.
And more lateral growth too. I love the shine on it too. So the more that it spreads out, and it holds that shine, you definitely see the veining and the texture that Justin was describing. They're fantastic.
And
That's an easy one.
We get some questions. You can see it fairly well in this photo, in the last one, where the leaves look a little multi-shades of green. That is characteristic of this plant. It is not a dark, evenly green like deliciosa. And so some people see it and they wonder if maybe it's sick. But nope, it does naturally have these variations in the mature leaf color, which is another nice thing about it, to add a little flair to your collection.
Very nice. Looks like we got a lot of pictures of Peru. Okay, here's our next one. Justin, I think this comes from you. Look, I see the Costa Farms spritzer there.
All right, if nobody else wants to start here, Monstera standleyana Albo. It's another one that doesn't fenestrate. Its leaves are a little longer, narrower. Albo variegata here has the irregular white variegation in each leaf. It's earned the nickname Cobra. Do you mind going back a slide, Diane? Sorry. It's earned the nickname Cobra because if you look at the leaf on the right side, not pointing to the mister but above the mister, It has this sheath around the petiole that kind of flares out like the head of a cobra. So instead of being just a narrow petiole, there's a flare on it.
Sounds like a good nickname, is Cobra.
This is also a relatively fast, easy grower. The leaves are quite thick, and so like Monstera deliciosa, I think it's a great entry-level Monstera if you've not grown one. Fairly quick, and these leaves do get fairly good size if you grow it up vertically and have a nice bright spot. I've seen there are some that are almost a foot long as it matures, so great gratification there.
So you just talked about vertical growing, and one of the questions we have for any of the types of Monstera, for any of our panelists, what kind of vertical support is best? Is it a moss pole? Can you put it up against, any kind of wood or plastic or metal pole? What do you recommend?
It is going to, I should let somebody else. Anybody else want to take this one first?
And well, you can answer,
No, in
of
Europe,
course.
Sorry.
Peter?
Go ahead, Ada. I want to say, yeah, in Europe, most of the monsteras are going to a moss pole and some plant rack, but moss poles are the most popular ones to keep them vertical.
If you have a humid enough environment, you can grow it up anything. It will, with enough humidity, latch onto a metal pole. If you have the average household conditions where it gets a little bit drier, something that maintains a little bit of moisture in it to help those roots get along, like a moss pole, like a coir pole, is beneficial. You can even grow up the side of the wall in your room, but those roots will attach. And if you ever need to take it off, they will pull your paint off. I may know that from personal experience as well.
Sounds like it. Oh, good.
We're in
So-
the process now of developing a new product that is wholly made from plant parts. It's called Climate, and we'll be introducing it at TPIE. So don't tell anybody until then. But it's made from farm finds, potato matter and elephant grass and things like that. And what it has in it, it's plants made for plants. So it is a pole also, but it won't hold all the disease and pests and things like that we've been finding in the traditional moss pole. And it has, because it's plant-based, the plant will cling to it naturally. So there's not a need for, tying it up with twine or watching it get away from itself. It will naturally cling to this climate pole. So forget I said that until TPIE, but it is an alternative that we're working very hard to provide and solve some of the issues that you'll find with moss poles. So we're very excited about that, and we'll have it on some Monstera, so you can see how naturally it clings to the pole.
That's exciting.
That is.
Yeah, we're very excited. Yep.
A friend of mine had a big Monstera that was too big for her to move when she relocated from Miami to North Carolina. And she had made, I thought this was a really cool idea. She had made a great DIY pole by taking a metal pole, so it was nice and sturdy, and she wrapped it in burlap, and then she tied it in place with twine. And
Smart.
the burlap provides enough moisture holding capacity that it could root in just fine. The metal was nice and sturdy. I wish I'd thought of that, but I've stolen
that is clever, because she solved that central humidity issue too. Because
Exactly,
when there's
yeah.
enough humidity and not so much water to hold pests and things, but enough humidity that the plant would want to naturally go to that source. So that's clever gal.
She might have to trademark that or something. And,
Yeah.
so for all of our participants, TPIE is it's a trade show that is held every January. A big focus is on houseplants, tropicals, that type of thing. And I'm guessing a lot of the things that are seen at TPIE by the growers and the retailers will make its way into like your local retailers within the next 6 to 12 months is what I'm guessing. Maybe shorter than that, depending on the availability. But if you hear us talking about TPIE, it's the industry trade show for tropicals and houseplants. Just wanted to clarify that. Okay, let's go through a couple more. I think we have about 8 more slides here. Who wants to take the subpinnata?
All
Yeah,
right.
I would
I don't
like to
want
say
to.
something.
Okay, good.
But I'm not familiar with this. In Europe, we don't have this kind of species yet.
So this is a really cool one that has a very un-Monstera-like appearance. This photo isn't showing it off as well, but the leaves look like palm fronds. They are pinnately
Great cow.
compound like that. And so it has just a really lovely texture. It is a climber like the other ones. And in my experience, this one has a little bit longer internodes than some of the other ones in similar conditions. And so you get more of a true vine kind of experience from it. It is a little thirstier than the other ones we've talked about too, which makes the self-watering planter that we at Costa Farms here grow it in perfect for it.
So that's what that planter is that we're seeing is a self-watering?
Correct. Yep. The narrow part at the base, that's a reservoir, and the grower pot is held above it. There's a wick that hangs down from the grower pot, and it absorbs moisture as the roots pull moisture out of the potting mix.
So I want to take a moment to brag on our panelists. So they're breeders, they're growers, they do their research, they do their consumer research. If they're growing something in a certain way and presenting that at retail, there is a really good reason for it. And Justin just explained it. And Heather, you were talking about this grow poll. So we're very, very thankful for experts like our 4 panelists, because what they're trying to do is make everything easier. They want you to be successful with your plants. And this is just another few examples. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now this to me is the classic Monstera. Maybe it's like one of the more, what is this the one that, what am I trying to say? Had a very high price tag. Is that right about this one?
It did. It during COVID, I saw these in auctions and I just sat back and watched people spend their grocery money on this stuff. And I just died for them because then you would see it on their Instagram later, or even on their TikTok, and they'd say, I'm so excited. My tie just came in. It was $750 and it has 2 leaves. And I'm like, oh my God, what are we doing to these people? Oh, so that's why I'm really excited about Costa Farms and leafjoy. I mean, we've just absolutely decided to interrupt that nonsense and make it more approachable and more available in the market at a reasonable price, because that fleece, can I say fleecing? That fleecing, it was madness. I mean, people were preying on the passion and the the desire for people to have all these amazing things. And so I know Costa did it first, and then when we're only 3 years old, so and then we came in, we made this much more approachable, so that you say that it's the classic type of Monstera is just a joy, because while it is rare, it's not widely available. I know Costa and leafjoy both do it beautifully. It's not so hard to grow that plant that it would merit that kind of price. So when things are more expensive, it should be because it's harder to grow, or it has more residency, or we have to hold on to it longer to get it, to market and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's a magnificent plant. And the more varied the foliage is and the striations and the blotches, the more desirable it is.
But I think in the beginning it was It wasn't in tissue culture, so the only way to propagate it was if you got a leaf, and the leaf would be what, 2 feet big on a stem. So it wasn't very easy to propagate, and then it was collectors had it and they were slowly propagating it, and that's when it was going for like the hundreds of dollars. And even when it first came out in tissue culture, it was still $40 for like a little tiny plantlet coming out of the lab. But as more of
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
labs got going with it, the price, of course, just plummeted. It went from being like a $40 plantlet and then down to probably a few dollars now. And so that's, the cost savings. And as people put it into production in larger numbers, then
Right.
it brought the price down. And we saw the same thing. I know we're not talking about philodendrons, but like with Pink Princess was another one that kind of went through
Yeah.
that, just astronomical, and then normalized.
Another example of supply and demand as well, because all kinds of crazy things happened during COVID. Okay,
Yeah.
so we've gone
Actually,
through a lot of,
uh,
did you have something?
yeah, do you mind if I circle back? So,
Oh, no
there's
problem.
something I find just fascinating about Thai constellation and variegated plants in general. So white variegated, yellow variegated plants are super trendy. The white variegation means it has less chlorophyll. And so this is a little bit weaker. It may be a little bit more finicky than your traditional Monstera deliciosa. Especially with this variety, I've noticed the bigger the white patches in the leaves, the more likely it is to go brown from any kind of stress. So, especially in the average home, it can be tricky to have a picture perfect Thai constellation. And if you're seeing some browning on the white parts, in general, inside that is totally natural. It's nothing to freak out about. It's more of a flag if you start to see browning or yellowing on the green parts of the leaf. But we're all excited. We're all after, these weaker plants rather than, the all green versions that are stronger and sturdier.
Okay, so here's another question. I'm going to end the PowerPoint now and we'll just put your lovely faces on screen. But the question that someone can answer is, what is the history of the name Monstera?
I believe it comes from monstrous, that, the traditional deliciosa has such big leaves and they have those splits on the sides and then the holes that, compared to your traditional plant, it just looks monstrous and exotic. And then in the subtropics where it can get 3-4 feet across, it is definitely a monster of a plant.
Good
Well,
answer.
I love that. That's perfect. I love that.
Okay, good.
The Monstera deliciosa is found by the Danish botanist, and that was Frederick Michael Liebman, who found and described the Monstera for the first time, and that was in 1849.
Very interesting. And what about fertilizer? We've talked about watering and light. What about fertilizing your Monstera?
Very beneficial, especially if you want it to grow big and fast. I am a big fan of time release fertilizers because I find them easier and you have to use them a lot less often. So like for me, I typically mix some time release fertilizer in spring and in summer. And that's it for my personal regimen. Any general purpose fertilizer will do. You don't need a special Monstera fertilizer. You don't need a special foliage fertilizer. If it's labeled for use on houseplants, your Monstera is totally going to appreciate it.
Same, exact same for me too. I do like to fertigate in the heavy growing season. I do add a granular to my soil, but I like fertigating or introducing fertilizer into my watering regimen during the growing season. I like the fast response, and
So
it's easy. It's easy to do. And
yeah,
I use a neutral. I do 10-10-10, something neutral across the board.
and I don't know if this is a myth, but you did just say during the growing season. So
Mhm.
I've always heard, kind of hold off with the fertilizer over the winter, but then when spring and warmer weather hits, that's when you start fertilizing, or is that
Heavier. Yeah, I keep feeding, not at the same rate. During the growing season, I like to feed appropriately, not heavy, but appropriately. And then I scale down. So that's when I really rely on my time release, like take what you want kind of thing, because I don't want to push it to do anything that it doesn't want to do. The days are too short for it to eat that much. There's not enough light. The heat's on, so I run my humidifiers. I do. This is not a do what I say, not what I do. I really do run my humidifiers. They have spot A all the time. But when the humidity's low, they're not really interested in doing anything but just surviving. So, I do. Did I mention I put my humidifier on? As soon as the heat goes on, I have a regime for that too. So, but yeah, you still want to feed. You always, I mean, they don't just stop eating. They don't go to sleep. They don't, they're still there. They
And
want to survive it.
I think that's where the advice that Diane has heard come from is that a lot of people think their houseplants go dormant in the winter
Yeah.
because we have the shorter days, the less intense light from the angle of the sun, and so plant growth dramatically slows down. And I always like to tell people to tie fertilizing to plant growth. The more actively it's growing, the more fertilizer it benefits from.
Good advice.
Yeah, that is good. And this is a perfect segue because I know that this webinar was about Monstera, but also about general winter houseplant care. So you guys have already touched on a little bit of that. So as the days get shorter, as the light goes down, the growth will reduce. So you reduce your fertilizer. Heather, you
Yeah.
said you add the humidifier. Is this just like any humidifier, like the one I have in my room that spits out humidity, or do you
Yeah.
have a special humidifier?
Yeah.
No.
Well, no, it's just any old humidifier. Because I have houseplants all over my house. Um, I have little ones everywhere, and then some like more humidity than others. And so, and some of the humidifiers I really enjoy. I put a little lavender oil sometimes, not a lot, but of the essential oil, not the fragrance oil. And then sometimes I'll put a little peppermint. And that's all beneficial to you and to your plants. Especially um especially in the winter. It's just super pleasant.
So are there any houseplants that really thrive in winter?
But the ones you water, the ones you give fertilizer to, and the
Well, I think, I
yeah.
mean, like peperomias, they tend to do well. Their common name was what is it, the radiator plant?
Mhm.
You can hang it next to your radiator or near a heating vent, and it's going to be just fine. Crashula indoors does really well. It likes that kind of dry, and it can take the cooler temperatures. Sansevieria can take anything. I could probably live on Mars. Those are just three that come to mind that do really well in the winter.
So one of the other questions is, and again, I think you've kind of answered this. So for the houseplants that struggle over winter, how do you help that struggle? So I'm hearing moderate your fertilizer, add humidity. Should watering kind of be cut back, or I guess you water less if they're growing less, but if it's a dry air, you need to water more? That's a question, not a statement, because I'm not the expert.
Well,
I
just
would I
dry
would
air,
test it.
humidity. Yeah.
Monitor.
Yeah. That's
You
smart.
know, always, if you don't want to put your finger in the soil, if you don't want to use the chopstick method, use a watering meter. But always check to see if it needs water rather than just assuming, okay, it's winter, so I'm going to water less. I had a really interesting situation. My last house, I lived in Oregon, and there was a big oak tree right outside my window. And so spring, summer, I had far, far less light than I did in the winter. And my house plants in that window actually grew faster in winter because the oak tree defoliated and they were getting all the light. So, there's always the pay attention to the environment and see what your plant is doing.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, I know about sticking your finger in there to measure. What's the chopstick method?
So if you use a wood chopstick, just like if you're baking a cake, um, it absorbs a little bit of moisture. And um, if there's enough moisture when you pull it out, there's going to be potting mix adhering to it. Whereas if it's dry, it's not going to have that moisture, and so it will come out clean.
I had never done that before, so now I'm going to. I'll keep my fingers and fingernails clean and use my chopsticks. Okay, here's a question. This is probably very difficult. It's going to be like, well, it depends. What about dropped leaves? I know, yeah, it depends on what plant you have, but what do dropped leaves indicate typically?
That your plant is stressed. And so then you have to play Sherlock Holmes and try to see if you can figure out, usually it's environmental, what environmental factor might be stressing your plant out. If you have it inside as a house plant, and you've not moved it, then usually start to look for things like temperature. Have you recently turned on your air conditioner or your furnace, or turned them off? Has something happened with humidity levels? That's where I start with drop leaves.
Yeah, I also inspect the leaves quite
Great
often.
point.
Yeah, and I find like if I'm about to have an issue, I'll see the tips full brown. If it's browning from the outside in, that's one issue. If it's browning from the inside out, that's another issue. So I try to catch it before it's dropping. But again, if it's one leaf, I'm not going to freak out. If it's 5 leaves, I'm going to lose my mind. If it's a ficus, I probably don't own it. Unless it's one of the Klingon varieties, then I do. But the drop leaves, sometimes it's naturally occurring and sometimes there's an issue. So again, when Justin says know your environment, he also, I'm sure, includes know your plant's health by inspecting it before it becomes an issue.
And that is a very good lead into this question. What's the best insecticide to use on houseplants? So you're inspecting them, you're taking a look at them. What freaks you out? What makes you say toss it? What makes you say I can fix this? And what do you fix it with?
I mean, I think having a healthy plant is your best defense, because then the foliage is going to have that resistance to it. Um, First thing I do is I use like a safer soap or something like that, something that's, you're going to spray, and any type of pest, it's going to smother it. Um, if it's something more serious, like mealybug again, which tends to get into the cracks and crevices, a lot of times if I see that, I'll just get rid of the plant, because it's just so hard to get a topical into. And then I don't know, I don't really ever use any systemics on my house plants. Do y'all use
No
systemics?
way.
Yeah,
No way,
no.
Jose.
Yeah.
It's in my house, right? So
Yeah.
I don't want to introduce that in my house. But I do love some of the companies have a type of leaf shine that has neem oil in it.
Mhm.
But if the water's right, the light's right, the humidity's right, and the plant is armed with the resilience that it needs, it should be naturally resistant. But I do
Right.
know if you're bringing in a new plant, or somebody's gifted something to you and you failed to quarantine and it came in sick, it can go nuts and move around onto your other plants. But there are leaf shine type um, solutions that are natural, and they usually have a little neem in them. They make the foliage kind of shiny, but they also have a preventative type of oil that bugs can't really stick to or don't stick to well. And then if you get it on the bug, it'll suffocate it. But really start exactly like Heather V said, start with resilient plant material that's viral index, that it came from a greenhouse that's clean, that cares. If someone gifts you something and you don't know where it came from, thank them because yay, what an amazing friend, but quarantine it and watch that it is also healthy.
On that leaf shine, I typically just spray it on the tops of the leaves. Should I be spraying it on the bottoms also?
Leaf Shine the brand or a leaf shiner?
A
Leaf
leaf
Shine the
shiner.
brand, a leaf shiner. If it's not a butyrol or it doesn't have a propellant from an aerosol, it can be on the front and the back. It just, if there's an oil in it, plants breathe. So if you start putting a bunch of oil, they're not breathing. They're super shiny, but they're going to be super shiny when they hit the counter too. So you want to let the plant breathe. But the Leaf Shine brand is a different thing altogether. You should not really be using that as part of your houseplant maintenance. As your general regime. So
what is
any
that
other
for then? Just a one time make it pretty?
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, you've gone to the salon, gotten a blowout, right? You don't do all that when you get home, So I'm taking Justin's lead on liking it to our own behavior, but yeah, for sure. But putting Leaf Shine, it helps you connect to your plant material. It helps you dust. It helps you put your hands on every foliage. You're spending time bonding with it, and you're also, making it pretty to look at too. So.
If you are trying to fight pests, the best piece of advice that I've found is think about the insect's life cycle, and you can't just think spray once, you're one and done. When you spray, you're typically knocking off most, if not all, of the adults, but the eggs are still there. And so weekly treatments are really, really going to be your friend in eradicating something. It's so easy to spray, think, okay, I got rid of them. And then 3 weeks later, there's a whole generation that's reproducing again. That the eggs didn't get affected by the spray.
Okay.
Which are often soil borne, right? So you
Right.
didn't even see them anyway. And now you do.
So a quick question or two, because we're almost out of time. Distilled water, yay or nay?
So I think there's a lot of mythology about watering. There are some plants that are a little more sensitive to fluoride. Fluoride is the bigger one, chlorine a little less so. And in most municipalities, the amount of fluoride in there isn't big enough to bother your plant. But there's the advice you see a lot to, fill a pitcher with water, let it sit out for a couple of days so the chlorine can evaporate. That can be problematic because most municipalities have switched now to a type of chlorine that doesn't evaporate out, and fluoride doesn't evaporate out, but water does evaporate. And so if you have, this perfectly fine 1 part per million fluoride in your water, but then, part of it evaporates out, the water evaporates out. You might have 5 parts per million fluoride in what's left of the water. If that's problematic to your plant, then that can get dicey. If you are concerned about your water quality, rather than just going and using distilled water, I recommend diluting your tap water, by mixing it with some rainwater, mixing it with some bottled water, mixing it with some that way you're bringing down the concentration of anything that might be in your tap water, and you're not having to spend a mint buying special water sources.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have well water. And so the water comes straight from the well into a salt conditioner. So I am vigilant about getting distilled water or buying bottled spring water for my plant material, because that they don't have this, salinity for salt.
Excellent. Okay. So we're over time. So if you guys, each of you in 1 minute, can just give your final tip for Houseplant Appreciation Day. Let's do that as a good way to close out our webinar. So who wants to give their first final tip for Houseplant Appreciation?
I would say just, and Heather's touched on this a lot too, is scout your plants, bond with them, I think is the way you put it when you're touching them. That way you can see if they need water, if they do have pest problems, if they're in the right environment. So spend time with them. Don't just set them there and forget about them.
That's right. It's not weird to be with your plants, right? Spend time with them.
Spend time with them.
Okay, who else? That's great.
My kind of under the radar tip is wash or dust them frequently. Any dust that's accumulating on the leaves is acting like a filter so that even if you have a plant in a bright light spot, if there's a layer of dust enough that you can write your name on the leaf, it's probably in a low light situation. And then that dust can also harbor pests. And so regularly cleaning them off, your plant will thank you for it so much.
Very good tip. Okay, Peter or Heather?
That is what I wanted to say as well. You can put them under the shower. I take them under the shower some now and then it's easy, to wash the dust off. You keep the house clean as well, but it does the job.
That's getting very close with your plants.
He
I'm sorry.
didn't say
I'm
he
not
got
gonna
in
get
with
into
them.
I'm joking.
And with the showering, if you're not sure how that works, like for a lot of mine, I'll take a plastic garbage bag and wrap it around the pot and then sort of tie it around the base of the plant. So that way, I'm not getting soil all over and clogging my drain.
Excellent. Okay, Heather Wheatley, you're going to be the final word here.
Oh, well, thank you for the opportunity. And I have to say, especially during this week, I try as often as possible to gift as many houseplants as I can, because it's that starter plant where somebody is successful, and then you have more houseplant friends, and you can share the joy of having houseplants. So I think gifting is really fun. I love I love fresh cut flowers, of course I do, but then they're gone. But if someone gave me a houseplant, um, then I think about that person every time I water it, or every time I or have some new growth, and I'll send a picture to the person like, this is amazing. I love what you gave me, and look how great it looks. And so it's a gift that lasts a long time. So I say gift them often.
I love it. Okay, you guys, this was wonderful. I wish we could go on and on, but you guys will be invited back. This was really good. So we're always happy to share your expertise. And so thank you. Enjoy, go appreciate your houseplants, go talk with them, go shower with them, or put them in the shower.
Hug a houseplant.
Go hug a houseplant. I love it. Yes. So thank you, everybody, and
Thank
have a
you.
wonderful weekend.